The content in this video includes sexual harassment, consent, sexual assault, and rape. These topics are sensitive and can evoke strong emotional responses. Please view with care and self-compassion. Topics of this video include contextualizing sexual harassment, defining and identifying sexual harassment, what to do after experiencing sexual harassment or assault, supporting victims of sexual harassment and assault, and community recovery, healing, and growth. Experts in the field, spanning across public health organizations, victim support agencies, colleges and universities, and associations providing legal guidance and support, all agree that sexual harassment and assault is a significant and serious problem in our society. A study conducted by UC San Diego in 2019 found that 63% of the population has been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. Anyone can be victimized by sexual harassment or sexual assault, though the likelihood that a person will experience sexual harassment is strongly correlated with their gender. According to a 2019 California study conducted by the UC San Diego Center on Gender Equity and Health, a stunning majority of California residents experience sexual harassment at some point in their lifetime. This study found that 86% of women and 53% of men reported having been victimized by some form of sexual harassment. Most of these victims, 81% of women and 48% of men, reported having experienced verbal sexual harassment. However, 26% of women and 10% of men reported having been survivors of sexual assault, underscoring that this issue is both vast and deep in its impact. Furthermore, evidence suggests that those in the LGBTQIA community are at increased risk of experiencing sexual harassment, and as are women of color. The Me Too movement that began in 2007 by activist and survivor Tarana Burke and popularized in 2017 by actress Alyssa Milano helped to bring to the national consciousness how widespread sexual harassment is, helping us all to collectively accept that sexual harassment is indeed a big deal, and that even the data that is available to us likely underrepresents the extent of the problem. Importantly, the Me Too movement helped to demystify the idea that sexual harassment and sexual assault is most commonly committed by strangers in dark alleys. Most sexual harassment occurs in public spaces, like on the sidewalk, in a store, or in a person's workspace or school. Most sexual assault takes place in private homes. While people are often verbally harassed by strangers, the more egregious the behavior, the more likely it is to be done by someone the victim knows. Most sexual assaults are committed by someone who is close to the victim. Undeniably, the issue of sexual harassment and sexual assault is one that we all must learn about and take responsibility for. What is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment is defined as any unwanted conduct on the basis of sex. Many more precise definitions exist and vary based on the purpose of the organization or policy. In other words, definitions of sexual harassment that you might find on social media or from victim support organizations won't necessarily be the same as legal definitions or definitions used in schools or workplaces. However, all definitions of sexual harassment include the following characteristics: conduct that is sexualized or occurring on the basis of sex. It's conduct that's unwanted, and it could be verbal, visual, cyber, or physical. Verbal harassment is unwanted comments, invitations, jokes, slurs, or threats related to sex or a person's sex or gender. Examples include catcalling, sexist slurs like slut or bitch, misgendering, sexually explicit comments, questioning a person's sexual experience, repeatedly asking for a person's phone number, or discussing a person's body parts. Verbal sexual harassment is the most common and often occurs in public spaces with many witnesses. For this reason, verbal harassment is normalized and frequently considered not that big of a deal. In fact, many of the behaviors that people believe they are using to be complimentary or flirtatious can be sexual harassment. The key difference is that harassment is unwanted. If a person indicates that they are not open to and welcoming any of these behaviors, they are harassment. This might include a verbal dismissal, but also might look like turning away, tensing up, or simply expressing discomfort. If a behavior is unwanted, it is harassment regardless of the intentions of the person conducting this behavior. Harassment is determined by its impact, not its intent. Visual sexual harassment is unwanted exposure to visuals that are sexualized or on the basis of sex. This includes sexual graffiti, forcing someone to look at pornographic images, lewd gestures, unwanted exposure to a person's genitals, or showing someone nudes without their consent. Visual sexual harassment is commonly coupled with other types of harassment, but always includes a visual element. Cybersexual harassment is when technology is used to target someone with unwanted content that is sexual or on the basis of sex. This includes actions such as repeatedly sending texts or DMs, or voice messages requesting a person's participation in a sexual act, sending unsolicited nudes, or posting or sharing another person's nudes, or spreading sexual information or rumors about someone online. Cybersexual harassment can be especially pervasive because harassment is not restricted to a person's in-person interactions. Cybersexual harassment can also be especially harmful because of the reach of the internet and its long memory. The damage done online can extend far beyond any individual's day-to-day environment. Physical sexual harassment is any unwanted physical contact that is sexual or on the basis of sex. This includes touching someone's body in a romantic or intimate way, such as hugging, holding hands, or kissing without consent, and touching private body parts, such as a person's butt, breasts, or genitals without consent. Additionally, the broader category of sexual harassment also includes acts of sexual assault, such as sexual battery and rape. Sexual battery involves groping a person's private body parts for the purposes of sexual gratification. This goes beyond touching that is present in the acts of physical sexual harassment into touching that is designed for sexual pleasure. For example, an act of physical harassment might be slapping a friend's butt as a joke, while sexual battery might be grabbing them and caressing someone's butt while trying to kiss them. Both of these behaviors are harassment if they are unwanted, but unwanted touching for sexual pleasure has more serious consequences, and many victims report more harmful impacts on those who experience it. Rape is defined as the penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus by any body part or object, or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person, without the consent of the victim. This includes forcing or coercing someone to engage in vaginal or anal sexual intercourse, or forcing someone to give or receive oral sex. This also includes sexual acts that occur when one person is unable to consent due to intoxication, age, disability, or other incapacitation. Though easy to define, identifying sexual harassment isn't always straightforward as it may seem, because these behaviors can, in some contexts, be wanted and welcome, and in other contexts, be unwanted and harmful, it can be challenging to determine as an observer, and sometimes even as the person targeted by these behaviors, if they are unwanted and harassing. For example, it may make someone feel flattered and confident to be the recipient of comments about their body, or it may make someone feel degraded or helpless. It may make someone feel sexy and desired when someone expresses sexual interest in them, or it may make them feel scared or disrespected. Many of these behaviors without context aren't fundamentally harassing, so it's the impact of the behaviors that matters most. So how do you know that a behavior is welcome and wanted? First, consider the context. Are you in a social setting, a date, a classroom, a professional environment? In general, expressing romantic or sexual interest in someone in an educational or professional setting isn't welcome, because these are spaces that are designed for valuing a person for their intellectual or community contributions. They're not spaces where anyone should assume that sexual overtures are welcome. Second, consider the agreements. What has been explicitly stated about the purpose of the event or interaction? Have you agreed to engage as friends? Have you agreed to a date? Have you discussed what boundaries either party might want to set? If it has been decided that you are participating in something in only a friendly capacity, or if someone has explicitly said they do not want to engage in physical or romantic contact, then it should be assumed that these agreements stand. Third, consider the verbal and nonverbal signs you're getting. How does someone react to a comment about their body, to a sexual joke, to a romantic gesture, to any physical contact? If anyone shows you with either their words or their body language that they are not comfortable with and open to that kind of interaction, then the behavior is unwanted. If you're not sure, ask. You might know that a behavior is harassing if anyone in the vicinity appears to be uncomfortable or verbally expresses discomfort. You have previously agreed that the behavior isn't wanted, and the behavior is inappropriate for the context. It is important to remember as well that the power dynamics are always in play. If there's any kind of power imbalance due to roles, gender, physicality, or setting, it might be difficult for someone to overtly express discomfort. For example, if a female student is in a room with multiple males who are all discussing her body, she may feel that expressing discomfort increases her vulnerability. Or if a team leader expresses romantic interest in a member of the team, that teammate might feel that expressing his discomfort might hurt his status on the team. This is why it is essential to be on the lookout for not just obvious verbal cues, but any signs that a behavior is unwanted. Another thing to consider is that a behavior might be wanted in some situations, but not in others. For example, someone may welcome sexual innuendos in their social conversations at a party, but not while working in a group project in class. Or someone might feel comfortable with physical contact by one colleague with whom they have a close relationship, but not with those they do not know well. Finally, it is important to understand that consent can be revoked at any time. For example, two people may be consensually and enthusiastically kissing at a party on Friday, but that doesn't mean they both want to continue kissing at a party on Saturday. Or a group of classmates might all be willing to participate in a conversation about a sex scene from a TV show, but no longer want to continue the conversation when it turns to discussing the individual sex lives of those in the group. Many behaviors that may be experienced as sexual harassment are sometimes romanticized in our culture, such as the lovesick neighbor who follows his crush around with a sign that says, "Please go on a date with me," or even the use of force or coercion in a sexual situation, such as characters do in movies like 50 Shades of Grey. Examples like these can be confusing. sending messages that to be sexy or successful in love, some degree of harassment is welcome or even necessary. These messages are generally gendered, communicating that masculinity requires a certain level of aggression and femininity requires a certain amount of resistance. In this way, cultural messages we all receive about our sexuality can be dehumanizing, displacing what any one person is into with expectations about how that person should behave and what they should want. In light of these complexities, direct and clear communication is essential and can be the foundation for strong collaborations, friendships, and romantic relationships. Noticing that your behavior has made someone uncomfortable, addressing it, and adjusting your behavior will always be welcome. Despite all the information that is available about sexual harassment, the statistics paint a clear picture. It is likely that you will experience or witness sexual harassment at some point in your life. And when that happens, what would you do? If you're a victim of sexual harassment, you may experience a wide range of impacts. Every person is different, and there is no one right way to feel about having been harassed or assaulted. However, it is common for victims to experience effects like difficulty concentrating, trouble following through on tasks, challenges to relationships, low self-esteem, dips in academic or professional performance, physical symptoms such as headaches or sleeplessness, anxiety, or depression. According to the UC San Diego Center on Gender Equity and Health, 38% of women and 14% of men who have experienced sexual harassment report anxiety or depression as a consequence of the abuse. Other common impacts included ending relationships and changing jobs. Ignoring the harassment may only compound these problems, adding shame and isolation to a victim's burdens. Furthermore, failing to address sexual harassment can help to further cultivate an environment where it is normal and expected. If you have experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault, there are things you can do right away and over time to heal and respond to the events. Immediately following the incident, get to a safe space, both physically and emotionally. Reestablishing a sense of control over your body and your environment is a vital first step in recovery. Until you feel safe from any emotional or physical harm, it may be difficult to resume everyday tasks. Ask for help or make decisions about what to do next. Within 24 to 36 hours, seek support from a trusted source. This might mean confiding in a friend or family member, or it might mean calling a rape crisis hotline or counseling center. The goal of reaching out is to remind your body and brain that you are not alone and that whatever you experienced is not your fault. Within 72 hours, seek institutional support and guidance. This might mean seeking medical attention. If you have been sexually assaulted, 5 days is the maximum amount of time forensic evidence can be collected. You can also receive treatment to prevent conception and for any sexually transmitted infections you may have been exposed to. Many medical centers may be able to refer you to additional services to help with the immediate and long-term effects of the trauma you've experienced. Institutional support may also include filing a report with the local police department. If you are not ready to pursue this kind of action, but may want to in the future, it can help to write down what you remember about your experience. Many district attorneys' offices also offer victim services, which may help you understand the legal recourse that is available to you, as well as how you may navigate the criminal justice system. Ongoing after the incident, understand and recognize the effects of trauma you might experience. Pay close attention to any changes to your sleeping, eating, and exercise habits, as well as any changes to your usual routines. Notice any shifts about your mood, energy level, task completion, and social habits. Try to note these things with compassion and without judgment. If you begin to feel powerless to cope with your emotions or day-to-day life, or if you notice that your health, relationships, or academic or professional performance has been impacted, you may need to seek additional help. There are many resources available in your community and online. Check out RAIN.org, sfwar.org, nsvrc.org, or peaceoverviolence.org for more information. If you are in this situation, it is important to remember that it is not your fault, and you are not alone. Finding a community, whether it is a single friend or a survivor support group to share your experiences with, is an essential part of healing and an important way to continue building a world free from sexual violence. If you know someone who has experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault, you can also play an important role in their recovery. Warning signs that someone around you is being or has been abused includes signs of depression, such as changes to sleeping or eating patterns, persistent sadness, or withdrawing from normal activities, self-harming, demonstrating low self-esteem, sexually transmitted infections, anxiety or worry about situations that previously weren't stress-provoking, avoiding specific situations or places, failing grades, withdrawing from classes, or problems with attendance at work or at school, and increased drug or alcohol use. If you observe these symptoms in someone you know, it's better to ask and be wrong than to let someone suffer without support. If someone discloses to you that they have been sexually harassed or assaulted, use RAIN's TALK method to offer them support. Thank them for telling you about their experiences. This may sound like, "Thank you for trusting me. I'm sorry that this happened to you. Thank you for sharing. I know this must be hard to talk about," or "I'm so glad you told me. I believe you." A. Ask how you can help. This might sound like, "What do you need from me? How can I support you? Would you like to go with me when you..." Try to avoid giving advice or pressuring a victim to act in any particular way. Giving them a sense of control is an important part of their healing. L. Listen without judgment. This might sound like, "That sounds really hard," or "I hear how painful this is for you. Would you like to say more?" Avoid making statements like, "That could have been so much worse," or "Why didn't you?" Don't interrupt, press for details, or make comparisons. K. Keep supporting. This might look like low-stakes check-ins, such as saying, "Is there anything you want to talk about?" and offering them normalcy and expressing empathy and compassion to whatever reactions they may have. If you're interested in learning more about ways you can support a classmate, friend, or loved one, check out the resources at rain.org. Recovery from the plague of sexual violence is a community affair, and there's a role for each of us. Raising your awareness about these issues and their impacts prepares you to be an ally for gender equality and an advocate for environments that are free from harassment. Whether you are a survivor of sexual assault, a victim of sexual harassment, a bystander who has not known how to address what they have seen, or even a person who has perpetrated harassing acts in the past, the widespread impact of sexual violence is traumatic for us all. The traumas can be single, distressing experiences or recurring events, and they can impact individuals and communities. Healing from trauma involves reestablishing safety and stability, processing and making meaning of the trauma, and restoring relationships with yourself and others. Regardless of your role in the community or your relationship to the trauma, you can support these phases of healing. Classes can model inclusive language and help establish agreements for how to engage respectfully during class. Friends can practice using the language of consent in everyday activities and offer validation and allyship to victims. Perpetrators can learn, reflect, take accountability, and do better. Survivors can care for themselves in ways that help them to integrate and heal from their experiences. Those who have power in a situation can use it to ensure that everyone feels safe and welcome. And all of us, every one of us, can commit to ongoing growth by listening and believing the stories of survivors.